The Champions League, the world's most watched annual sporting event and the biggest prize in European club football. Founded as the European Cup in 1955, it allowed the champions of each country to compete at a European level. Since 1993, the competition has undergone various rebranding and restructuring steps, giving us the global phenomenon that is the modern-day Champions League. Despite a long tradition of football on the island, dating back to Belfast in the 1870s, no Irish team has ever graced the competition. In this video, we'll be asking some simple questions like, do other small leagues qualify? What is stopping us? Why should we try? And how do we qualify? Let's start with the first question. Do other small leagues qualify? Looking at 4 of the smaller leagues, whose teams regularly qualify, namely those of Cyprus, Denmark, Switzerland and Portugal. Comparing their populations, the island of Ireland sits in the middle with a population of 6.6 million. Looking at the number of times a club from each league has made it to the Champions League group stages. Clubs from Cyprus and Denmark have qualified 4 and 6 times respectively, while a club from the island of Ireland has never qualified. Swiss clubs have made the group stages 8 times, and Portugal 23. It is therefore safe to say that having a small population doesn't preclude qualifying. As for the relative size of their economies, the island has the second largest economy of the group, notably much larger than Portugal's, despite having less than 2/3 of its population. It is therefore also safe to conclude that economic strength doesn't always correlate well with success on the pitch. The next question is, what is stopping us from qualifying? If the size of the island's population and economy are not the problem, what about competition from GAA and rugby? A recent survey shows football to be by far the most popular sport in Northern Ireland by participation, ahead of Gaelic football in second, while a 2015 report by the Irish Sports Council showed a similar trend in the Republic. Another recent survey conducted in Britain on tourists attending the Premier League games highlights the huge interest in Premier League football in the Republic. The study showed that fans from the Republic represent the largest visitor group by some distance. This report does not have data for Northern Ireland as part of the UK, but adding a conservative 25% gives us a rough estimate for the whole island, which is for the English Premier League only. Given that football is the most popular sport on the island in spite of competition from other sports, let's now look at the attendances and general interest in the domestic game. There are 2 top-level leagues operating on the island, the Danske Bank in Northern Ireland and the SSE Airtricity in the Republic. Using a weighted average of the attendances in the 2 leagues shows a rather weak support relative to the other leagues in this group. So why the low level of interest? It would seem that fans largely view the domestic game as an inferior product and vote with their feet in favour of English and Scottish football. This leaves 2 semi-professional domestic leagues that cannot retain the best players, who frequently leave at the end of short-term contracts. This results in clubs receiving little or no compensation when players are sold. This brings us to our next question. Why should we try? The first reason is the large amount of European money that is currently being passed up. Below the Champions League is the second-tier competition, the Europa League. And while an Irish club has never made the Champions League, Shamrock Rovers qualified for the Europa League in 2011, with Dundalk repeating the feat in 2016. Looking at Dundalk's European run in more detail, as winners of their domestic league the previous season, they entered the Champions League qualifiers in the second round. After overcoming the Iceland and Belarus champions, they entered the final qualifying round for the Champions League against the Polish champions, but lost 3-1 on aggregate. However, as a reward for making the final round, they automatically qualified for the Europa League group stages, where they earned a draw and a win, both a first for an Irish team. The money Dundalk made in Europe dwarfed what they earned for winning the domestic league. And if they had won the final qualifying round for the Champions League, they would have instead earned a minimum of €13.2 million. In 2017, Dundalk suffered the familiar fate of players being out of contract and leaving. As usual, they were poorly compensated for these departures, and they were beaten to the league title by Cork City. Still, Dundalk's run shows how smaller clubs can compete and capture the public's imagination. European success stimulates interest in the league, but weak contract security holds back clubs and the league in general. Next are the economic benefits of a professional domestic league. The island unquestionably runs a large football deficit, spending huge sums on trips, kits and sports TV packages. Little of this money is invested back in the local economy. Conservative estimates for the whole island put this deficit in the region of €250 million per year. How could the domestic game compete with the English Premier League? In our view, it shouldn't be either or. Fans can support both. In summary, there is clearly a large public demand for quality football. With investment, a healthy domestic league would benefit local businesses around the island. Players and clubs would contribute to the exchequer, and the sale of properly contracted players could generate much-needed revenue for the league. Next are the football benefits of having a healthy domestic league. In the Premier League in 2007, Northern Ireland players accounted for 2.34% of minutes played by all players, which over the next 10 years dropped to just under 1%, a fall of 59%. The Republic of Ireland saw a drop from just over 6 to 4.77, a drop of 21%. The Championship also saw significant drops for Northern Ireland and the Republic. Additionally, first-team representation at the top 6 clubs has ceased completely, ending a long tradition of players from the island at England's most beloved clubs. While the Old English Division 1 was largely a home nations league, it is safe to say that the global phenomenon that is the modern Premier League is not serving either of the two national teams well. The final reason we should strive for Europe is a simple one: invest in our youth. Success rates for players cross-channel are low, and leaving school and family too young causes many problems. Everyone benefits if players are kept home until more mature.